Yeah, I have a question, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Could you read again what your understanding is of the top item on page 719, where you understand that we ended up? It would be the new number 3, mooring buoys on state-owned.
Sure. So that's number 130 on the pick list. And the way we understand you're looking to have that read is private recreational mooring buoys on state-owned aquatic lands shall not be used for residential, parentheses, living on the boat, or commercial purposes.
Private mooring buoys.
Private recreational mooring buoys. So this is, again, back to that brochure, the DNR brochure we provided you on Monday. DNR has a different lease and sort of, authorization process for commercial buoys, and
would it be clearer, when you think of the concerns we've had about this, to add that this does not apply to commercial buoy or commercial buoys?
Commercial
boats.
If you like. Yeah, I mean, you could further clarify that. I mean, basically, because none of the other phrases, all the other phrases basically say mooring buoys, I think we'd read that to be all-inclusive.
Could you read it one more time?
Sure. The sentence is proposed to read, private recreational mooring buoys on state-owned aquatic lands shall not be used for residential, living on the boat, or commercial purposes. So that also gets away from mooring buoys that might be part of an aquaculture operation that's on state-owned aquatic lands. And if they are, then they'd be non-conforming, and it'd be more of more of an issue between the aquaculture. It'd be more of a matter of the lease with the DNR for the aquatic lands rather than.
That's why I was thinking that this does not apply to commercial buoys, because that's where commercial vessels would tie up, would be to commercial buoys.
Should be.
Yeah, I think it's the way that I'm with you on wanting to make it absolutely clear that we don't want to interfere with aquaculture, permitted aquaculture activities. We'd want them to allow them to have a buoy.
And I think this says that, it just, we could make it more clear.
Yeah.
Is that the way to do it, that language, or this does not apply to commercial buoys?
It's fine to have it there if you like it.
Does that work?
It does, but I don't want to sound like a former president, but it's like what does this refer to?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
I'm really hoping we can
consider another provision that says commercial mooring buoys need to, I suppose it's kind of a repeat of number 2 on the previous page. That's generic to all mooring buoys. The installation and use of mooring buoys in marine water shall be consistent with all applicable state laws, including WAC 246-282, the current National Shellfish Sanitation Program, and other state Department of Natural Resources, Health, and Fish and Wildlife standards. That would also be all-inclusive. That would apply to commercial buoys as well.
And so here we said commercial buoys shall comply with section H2. That's the previous one.
Well, commercial buoys would have to comply with all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just hoping somebody didn't read this in isolation.
Sure, and that's probably true for every provision.
But that's true. You're right. We can do that all throughout this thing.
So,
yeah.
I mean, yes, courtesy references are helpful. We definitely had input about those during the committee process, and some of that was considered to be overly duplicative by the Planning Commission, pulled out. Some of those we have recommended putting back in, but yeah.
So I think you're saying we could have a little sentence there like, hey, flip the page back.
Did you already read number 2?
I think if we do that, then I'm
It does seem to have to connect somehow, because if I were to read this on its own, it doesn't stand on its own somehow.
Item 3.
Yeah.
One way that we can do it is to have a provision for the private recreational mooring buoy last in the list, so that all of them,
All the general.
all the general apply, and then that one is just specific to the private recreational.
Yeah, that is more consistent with the construct of the document where the most general things go first and the more specific you get, kind of bump them later.
If you said in number 2 then, if the installation and use of recreational and commercial mooring buoys, in that one, then when you get to number 3 and it just says private recreational buoys, then you know it doesn't apply to the commercial.
Sure.
In the first one. Does
Yeah,
that do
the
it?
one thing is that there are navigational buoys, there are other types of buoys that are proposed.
That need to also comply with the state, all
Okay.
those state laws. Maybe let's take a look at the definition in Article 2.
Mhm.
And while you're doing that, my understanding is that navigational buoys, since people are prohibited to tie up to them, or obviously to,
They're not a mooring
in any
buoy,
way,
correct?
they wouldn't be counted in the number of buoys permitted per acre then.
Correct.
Maybe if we
Sure.
just, instead of saying it's an all-inclusive list, just said the installation and use of mooring buoys, parentheses, including recreational and commercial, in the parentheses.
Mhm.
And that wouldn't say it didn't apply
Doesn't
to every other
preclude.
buoy you can think of.
Mhm.
Does that do it? Then when you get to the next one, you say this is just private. Back there it said commercial.
Okay,
Is that-
so I didn't write it down as you said
Okay,
it.
So after mooring buoys, you just say parentheses,
Parentheses.
including recreational and commercial buoys, in the parentheses,
Commercial,
in marine waters.
Okay.
comma, okay.
And that way, if somebody's reading that and goes to number 3, they'd say this is about private recreational buoys, and they'd realize that commercial buoys were all under number 2. I would hope.
Sure, and
Yeah, that's good.
just to close the loop, the definition is fairly brief in Article 2. Mooring buoy means an anchored floating device in a water body used for the landing or storage of a vessel or watercraft. Fairly simple,
Okay.
which not to say that that couldn't change, but
So David, say it again, that sentence started out the installation and use.
Of mooring buoys, parentheses, including recreational and commercial buoys, in parentheses,
Okay,
in marine waters.
okay. Thank you.
okay.
Can never be too clear.
You know, to make it maybe more, the language more elegant, what if we just said at the very beginning of number 1 there, commercial and recreational mooring buoys may be permitted, blah, blah,
Well, there may be other,
Types
Let's
of
see.
buoys.
Would
Yeah,
there be other-
the
there may be other
example I
type of-
gave doesn't apply, but
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well,
The concern is that might be too limiting, whereas just using the term mooring buoys would imply all mooring buoys. And the
let's see,
question
there's
is,
the no anchor zone buoys, those type of buoys.
which aren't really mooring buoys, those are markers.
Right.
Is there
Yeah.
blah. Even mooring buoys are only used for mooring.
Yeah.
By definition.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, so that,
you could go back, yeah, you could do it your way.
Okay.
Commercial and recreational mooring buoys may be permitted, etc.
at the start of Regulation 1,
Yeah.
and is that instead of or in addition to the edit in number 2?
Meaning number 3.
No.